Welcome everybody to this week's episode of Sunday Table Tennis Live. As always, I'm joined by fellow hosts Ryan Jenkins and Keith Knox to discuss everything table tennis. So hope everyone is ready for action-packed table tennis podcast. Just looking back to recap on last week's amazing episode with the legend Jean-Micheal Maze. I think we had some great interest on the show, and I think people engaged really well, both through the show and afterwards. We've made some interesting feature changes to this week's show, so I hope you're going to like that. Big shout out to Keith Knox for all that work. Again,
he's done some great work, hasn't he, John?
Oh, amazing. I have to say, I don't think we can take any credit for that, Ryan.
Well, he's done his work. John, he's done his work. I've got all the guests coming on. So what are you doing? It's a three-way thing, I thought.
Well, I bring my presence, Ryan, to this show, and you know it. I'm the expert. Exactly. Moving on, I'm very happy and delighted to be able to say that we have Jonny Cowan joining us this week. So I think it will be a really interesting show for everybody.
Yeah. Big Jonny.
Yeah, to be honest, Jonny's been a fundamental asset actually to our own club here in Northern Ireland. We brought it to Jonny, I think it was about 6-7 years ago. We wanted to get a new venue and start doing a bit of fundraising, and Jonny was straight on it straight away. He wanted to do a little piece to the camera, and we done 4 episodes, and it actually helped us raise, I think, up in £2,500 or £3,000. So he was the face of our campaign. So it was brilliant.
Well, just before you give the clip of Jonny coming in, Keith, I'm just going to list some of his achievements, both on the table and off the table. 6 times Irish national champion. That's a great feat, obviously. He played in Germany for 1 year and then France for 4 years as a full-time player. 2 Commonwealth Games in 2002 and 2006 in Manchester and Melbourne, respectively. 2 times he played the European Championships in 96 and 98, and 3 times the World Championships in 95 in China, 97 in Manchester, and 01 in Osaka. And then after his playing days, and he hung up his bat, obviously Master of Ceremonies at the London 2012 and Rio 2016 Olympic Games. His current role is the ITTF European Marketing Manager, but he's worked previously with companies like UEFA. He worked at the Olympic Games in Rio, Premiership Rugby, 2 Circles, Everton Football Club. And of course, he was the Master of Ceremonies at Drumchapel's anniversary and many times at the English Open. So we're going to bring Jonny in today.
Absolutely. As the sport ripples and really starts to achieve its high standards that we know it can and its reach, everybody's picked up a bat at some point. So ITTF and all partners involved trying to take the game, build out. What a guy. That a John. Amazing. Very good. I mean, we spoke a lot in Sweden and Austria.
Morning, Jonny.
Jonny.
Morning, guys. Good morning. How are we?
Morning, Jonny.
Very good. Very good, Jonny.
Great to see you. Great show, guys. Great show. Last couple of weeks I tuned in. Very good. Very good.
Brilliant. So, Jonny, how's things in lockdown and how's everything going for you?
Yeah, so far so good. Family's healthy and we're getting on with what we have to do, much like yourselves, no doubt, and everybody else. Professionally, it's tough times. We all know that there are no events at the moment. So, like every rights holder, whether it be a English Premier League football club or any international federation or anybody who puts on events, it's challenging. There's no revenues coming in from TV and sponsors, and it's tough for everyone. The players aren't playing, the coaches aren't coaching like you guys. We're not in the halls, we're not doing what we normally do. But yeah, we just got to deal with it in the best way we can, and hopefully we're back soon.
Yeah. Very good, very good. It's certainly a strange times, I think, for all of us. And us as a club, we're actually looking at the moment, how do we actually start to begin to ease the lockdown, and I guess hopefully we'll touch a little bit on that later as to what we can do, what the ITTF plans are and what they're hoping to roll out. But without further ado, we'll probably just get straight into the questions, because a lot more will start to come out once we get into them. So, as we've seen from the intro there from Jonny, from Ryan, you've had a fairly fantastic career. You've been a top footballer. You were now representing the ITTF, the voice of ITTF, as a lot of people have become to know you as. So I guess we're just wondering, you initially started off with a great love for football, and that transpired into table tennis. So just wondering, how did that come about?
Yeah, a bit of a journeyman, I think, in sport, I guess. Yeah, no, I love, like you guys probably, and many of the viewers and everybody involved in sport, loved all sports. And in primary school, was Heather Baird, then Heather Barrett, who got us started hitting a ball in one of the little huts in the playground. But I also did football. I think most people in UK and Ireland do play football, and in Europe. So managed to play for the Northern Ireland Primary Schools Belfast team in a tournament in Jersey in '87, and just tried to do both then as I went to Inst, and Michael Thompson and Tony Phillips and Alan Strong and people like that then involved in the Ulster scene. And when I was 15, I started to play a little bit more football. I'd been playing for Hillsborough Boys, and eventually I found myself playing for the school team. We obviously at Inst it was more sort of rugby and hockey, and table tennis obviously very strong. I got coaxed to come back and try a bit of football by the then vice principal, who was involved with the football side. And I played for Glentoran for a while, second team, under 18s. And and then finally was able to play for Northern Ireland as a schoolboy international. So had 2 caps. Well, 1 cap for the year, you get 1 cap for the season, 2 matches, Republic of Ireland and Wales.
Yeah. I hope you lost Wales, John, did you?
We couldn't give them a good beating, Ryan, very much like the table tennis.
That's right.
You talented Welsh wizards. So that was then, and it was the following year in '94. So I'd made that Northern Ireland schoolboy team a year early, and I had 1 more year to go. And then in the pre-season in Lisburn, I remember I just went over on the ankle. Guy fell on top of me. Next thing I know, I was in the hospital lying on the X-ray table, and that was my ankle completely in bits. And literally,
I also find interesting, John, that did you play against Pat Jennings or train against him or something?
Yeah, so when I was 8, I did a training course with 3 of the Arsenal players at the time. Pat Jennings, Northern Ireland legend, Brian Talbot as well was involved. So that was good fun, good learning from those people. And so the ankle got shot basically, and within 2 or 3 weeks I spoke to Hilton Manili in Germany, and at the same time there was a club in Germany looking for somebody to play, and the captain of the schoolboy team, he'd gone to Spurs for a trial and didn't make it. A guy called Graham Filson from Korean, he didn't make it, came back from Spurs saying no, and he was much better footballer than me. So I sort of was in the mind of, well, if he hasn't made it, I probably won't be able to make it. And then Hilty had this offer, and that was it. I went down the table tennis route, and the following year after A levels, I was in Dänischenhagen in Germany.
Very good.
So it kind of falls from there, and then professionally, full circle, done a few different things, and it's delighted to be involved in table tennis now. It's strange coming full circle again, but it's awesome, and things are changing and things are moving forward. So exciting times.
Yes, Jonny. Just moving on to your career as a player. And I'm sure you've got many highlights, winning 6 national titles. I will add you've got one more than me, so I was disappointed to see that stat here. But given that you've had a load of career highlights, is there one that stands out amongst any?
Good question.
Beating Ryan Jenkins, is it? No,
that's got to be a high. I remember playing you, Ryan, in '95 in I think it was the Six Nations. It was in Northern Ireland. I'd just gone to Germany. We came back, Hilty and I and I remember playing a young whippersnapper, Ryan Jenkins, running around mad around the table.
I remember
I
that.
might have just squeezed past the post on that one, but I don't think it happened very much after that.
I think it was more than squeezed past the post. I had a bit of a lesson that day, but yeah, it was a good lesson. Put in good stead.
No, it's difficult to pick one, John. I mean, I loved representing Ireland. I loved, playing with the shirt, and I loved the team environment. I loved playing with you guys, playing against Ryan. I love that kind of team dynamic. World Championships, Commonwealth Games for Northern Ireland. But I think winning the national championships is always nice. I'm sure you guys would agree with your own CVs and achievements on that front.
Yeah, there's an interesting one, Johnny, and I wanted to ask you, and I think it fits into this topic. One memory of mine would be when you beat Colm Slevin in the Cardiff Grand Prix. I don't know if you're one of the only Irish players that would have beaten Colm especially when he was other than players maybe beat him as a junior when he was younger, but while he was a senior and while he was the number one player in Ireland, you're probably one of the only players to have beaten him. I'm just wondering how that felt, and was that a surreal moment for you to beat someone like Colm?
Yeah, maybe I was lucky to get him when he was near the end of his career, but Colm's obviously a great friend of all of ours, and what a legend for table tennis. What a guy on the international scene, and everybody knows him. The top guys know him. Stefan Fetzner, Jorgen Persson, they all say hello. They all still ask about him today, and I'm still in touch with Colm. What a great guy and a great player. Yeah, I mean, to have beaten Colm was amazing. I know, Ryan, you will have played against him many times. Very steady, gave nothing away. Very good on the mental side of it as well. Could contain anybody, having watched him play against the Applegrens and Thierry Millers and Alan Cooks and all those sorts of matches. One disappointment I do have after that, I think that was the semi-final, and I then wanted to go on and make sure I won the tournament, because if you beat Colm, you should be playing pretty well, and then it'd be great to get a gold medal after. And I think it was something like 19-16 up in the third, I think, against, was it 21 points then? I think it still was.
Yeah. And
I think it was 19-16 up or something in the third against Gavin Rumgay, and he gave me a couple of the old wobblers and beat me in the final. So that was a little bit of a disappointment not to have fully capitalized having beat Colm, but yeah, good times. Great to have played with Colm, as you know, John, on the team. What a great team guy.
Yeah, absolutely. You just couldn't agree more. You just kind of felt like you were involved with the big guys, because they gave him so much respect. So when you're in the practice hall with him and so on, I think he brought so much to our team, and yeah, couldn't agree more with your thoughts there.
Johnny, the ITTF recruited a voice of ITTF a couple of years ago, I should say. You came out on top. How did that feel? And what is it? Are you proud to be the voice of ITTF?
Yeah, that was cool. The guys at the ITTF, they try to do innovative things and bring the game forward, and that was the time when they really wanted to push commentary. So threw my hat in the ring and managed to be selected, which was awesome. So getting to the big events, sitting in the commentary box, watching amazing table tennis, being amongst the top players of the world, and starting that whole journey. I mean, it was great to have joined the likes of Don Parker and people like that who were involved. Michael Anderson was doing a bit, Richard Prowse. So it was great. Really enjoyed that, and I guess that those were the sorts of things that kept me involved with the game. So whilst I was retired from playing and started to work at Accenture and pretty full on weeks, week in, week out, 70, 80 hour working weeks, I'd kind of drifted out. So those were the sort of things that started to bring me back in and fueled my energy again for the sport. And again, as I said earlier, it's just really nice that the professional sort of loop has come back around again, and being back involved is awesome.
Can you give us a quick snapshot of what it's like a day in commentary? Because obviously people hear the voice, see the match, but obviously everything that goes into it must be enormous.
Yeah, it's you've got different styles of commentators. It was great to learn from the likes of Don Parker, who'd been doing it years and so on. And Don will talk about times when he was doing it with Tony Gubba, the famous sort of commentator on all sports in the UK. Yeah, I mean, there's different styles. My style is very much, you know, you need to prep, you need to know who the players are. There's so much in table tennis, as we know, which is great. The sport's rich in history and activities. And so what are their rankings? What's their form been like? Have I managed to speak to them in the warm-up hall or their coach, or can I find something out that's interesting for the fans? And then when you're in the zone, the professionals will tell you that there are sort of commentators. So you've got the color commentator who describe the environment and the atmosphere and give you the background and, you know, welcome to Dusseldorf. We're here at the whatever hall venue. And then you've got the technical, so someone who will really go into the detail of how the player is playing tactically, how they're holding the racket, their technique. And so if you can blend the two, then you get a good storytelling and enough detail for the fans watching, which is crucial, obviously.
Yeah.
Very good. I think obviously there's been massive announcements with the ITTF recently, and we're lucky enough to get a bit of an insight into that last week when we were talking, Jonny. And you know, Steve Dainton, the ITTF CEO, you know, obviously announced, you know, the possibility of these new changes, the women's only circuit, the Grand Smashes. You know, there's obviously a lot of very, very exciting changes, and we've got a wee clip to show very soon. So what's your thoughts on that, and what are the main changes that you see and what that'll bring?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Keith. I mean, earlier sort of suggesting that this moment in time is tough with all the events being postponed, or we know the players and the coaches aren't active, and on one hand that's hugely challenging for any sport, including the ITTF and table tennis. And on the other hand, the excitement of the launch of World Table Tennis, which you're just showing there, is hugely exciting for the sport. I mean, we're trying to push the sport into a new era, into an entertainment era, into an era where the players become true global stars, to earn more money, to be more present on social media, to build their personalities, to have more content wrapped around the sport, to give the fans more close to the action experiences, to bring more partners and new partners globally into the sport. And basically the goal is to grow the table tennis economy. So grow it in a sense of everything becomes bigger for all of our partners and all of the stakeholders within the sport, national associations, clubs, coaches, players, and then maybe more roles can be created within the sport. You talked about commentary there. You know, if you look at football, because the economy is so big, you know, there's so many different roles now in football, whether it be a pundit, whether it be commentary, whether it be analysis, whether you do a magazine show that's sold into Singapore or sold into Eurosport. So the goal through this new platform is to grow the table tennis economy, truly take it to the place where we believe, and I think you guys hopefully believe too, and everybody watching, where we really want table tennis to catch the golfs and the tennises of the world and be truly catapulted into, you know, well-known, publicized, broadcast and engaged sport.
Because we chatted about it on the phone, didn't we, Jonny, about the player responsibility in all this?
Yeah, for sure.
They need to have presence, and they need to come forward as well and showcase themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we want everybody to work together on this. All of the stakeholders, as I say, players, national associations, coaches, broadcasters, media partners, sponsors, and the players. You know, we're working with them, and they've been brilliant, given the ITTF media team their time over recent years, whether it be in interviews, whether it be in the practice hall, whether it be behind the scenes fun stuff that we've tried to do to build their personalities. And if they can then also work on that too. Many of the guys and girls are awesome now in English. And so we can really build their personalities, promote them. And yeah, so the more they do, Ryan, and I think one of the things is probably to roll out some sort of media support, media training that the national associations can then also use with their players and really give them upskilling to be able to engage and sell themselves also. In terms of Steve's note, Steve is the global CEO, and I believe that any CEO in any business needs to be future gazing, needs to be challenging, needs to think of the future changes that can keep a business moving, whether you're working at BMW, Kellogg's, British Airways, for example, in the airlines, particularly at the moment under serious pressure. You have to keep innovating and changing to be relevant and to be appropriate in the market. So, I think Steve's doing the right thing in terms of reflecting on what could be, what might make sense. Clearly, that's Steve pushing his ideas out, which is perfect. Again, what I think a CEO should do. In terms of changes to the World Championships, that would have to go through a process, I imagine, through the AGM and so on and so forth, and probably for our members to vote on. I think what Steve's getting at is that if you look at the calendar at the moment, it's actually quite confusing, I think. So having football and rugby and cricket and other sports, tennis, for example, golf, it's quite easy to understand as a fan, as a broadcaster, as a media partner, as a sponsor looking into it. You can see that there's a clear calendar, and you can see that players are trying to get to the finals at the end of the year, whether it's the Road to Dubai or to the ATP or WTA finals for tennis. So, we have the World Tour, and then we have the World Championships, and then we have the World Cups. So it's quite confusing to be able to differentiate which one is the pinnacle. In a year where I remember talking to British Airways when they were coming on board for the Team World Cup in 2018, and they asked me, so Jonny, we're sponsoring the biggest team event of the year for table tennis. And I was like, well, no, because in 2 months' time, we're going to be in Halmstad for the World Team Championships. And they were like, oh, okay, so which one's bigger? And so then it suddenly started to become a little bit confusing. And if you imagine in October's now, we have the World Cups for men and women. And then 5, 6, 7 weeks later, we have the World Tour Grand Finals. So we're crowning a male and a female player as World Cup winners in October. And then 6 weeks later, we're crowning the World Tour winners, the top players. And so I think the events that have come to now have been fantastic for the sport, but I do think, as Steve suggests, we need to keep thinking of new innovations and the future and how to streamline it.
Just thinking about national associations, where do you see their role in this new concept, World Table Tennis? Do you see it becoming a player franchise now, or do you, in terms of these individual events, or how does it look?
The goal overall, John, is to try to grow the table tennis economy. So all stakeholders and all members and all parts of the sport to be able to benefit from that growth. And national associations are clearly the members of the ITTF, so they are fundamental to the whole system. So the goal is to put the players on a higher pedestal, bigger prize money, more coverage, better TV production, more wow events, more commercial power. So we can start to bring in big sponsors and more money. We know we've been trying to push for a few years now on that front, but we hear in the market that we should be pushing much more. And that's what World Table Tennis wants to do. A little bit like what FIFA clearly do. They can generate a lot of cash through their World Cups, for example, and then that money can be reinvested back into the sport. National associations in football get quite a package, for example. So that would be one of the goals, is to be able to refund back into the sport to help the growth and development. In terms of the World Table Tennis platform, John, it's definitely probably more geared towards the players, a little bit like tennis. So to try to get the players really getting to the next levels. But national associations are part of that. They develop the players and grow the players. And we're talking to national associations at the moment about the various elements to it and what might impact, for example, funding from government, or the money that goes into the development of the players and the coaches and the physios, and no doubt you, John, and Ryan in particular, with your national programs and performance and the money that you have to send players around the world and the training camps. So we have to sort of figure all that out with the national associations. But certainly the World Table Tennis platform is to really grow the economy of the sport, to take it where we want to take the sport and believe it should be.
Just with regards
Yeah,
to the Grand Smashes, Johnny, I think that's quite an interesting concept. I was speaking to the guys off air before we came online. How do you see that going forward? Is that going to be like a Wimbledon, US Open type in tennis? Is it going to be, is the World Championships included in that, or how is that looking?
Yeah, no, good question. So, World Table Tennis is a separate company to the ITTF. I think that's one thing to get out there and share that. So it's basically the commercial arm of the ITTF, and the ITTF are sitting on that company board, guiding the strategy, so that tie back to the ITTF strategic plan and the vision can be realized through this commercial vehicle. A little bit like the Premier League with the FA. Okay, maybe at times that doesn't seem to connect too often in terms of grassroots, but it's that concept where it's the Premier League, it's World Table Tennis driving the commercials, and it's the FA, it's ITTF looking after the game and the development and the infrastructure and the National Association membership side. Tennis have done it with the Davis Cup. Cosmos, for example, investing in the Davis Cup, which you might have seen in November last year, was the first week. They're calling it now the World Cup of Tennis, or the World Championships of Tennis. So World Table Tennis is the commercial arm, and in there's proposed to have at the moment 34 events. So the current World Tour, the licenses finish at the end of this year, so there aren't any World Tour events in next year actually at the moment. That'll be the World Table Tennis events that then come onto the calendar. And the goal is to have 4 Grand Smashes, which absolutely, Keith, is your Grand Slam in tennis, it's your major in golf. And we want these events to over the next 10, 20, 30 years become like your Wimbledons, like your Roland Garroses. Oh, we've just lost Ryan there, have we?
I think Ryan has been offline.
That's no harm, Johnny. We don't need Ryan here. Conversations for big boys, and Ryan's not involved in that, clearly.
Yeah.
I'm very interested there, Johnny, and I went to the Australian Open tennis this year. I spent a lot of days there. It's very close to me where I live, and you can just feel that concept of, you know, the players with their team around them. There's a lot of staff, a lot of people employed through the game, and I can feel, and I could feel how that could really look in table tennis in 5 years' time, for example, or 10 years' time. So when I seen this World Table Tennis concept, it was exciting when you can relate it to something like an Australian Open, Grand Slam in tennis.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, how did you feel, John, around the whole campus and the experience going through, and the feeling and the look and everything? How was all of that?
Yeah, it was actually amazing, because actually Gary Cahill, who was the Irish national coach for tennis, is now a freelance coach, and he was working with a Russian player, 71 in the world, a female player. So I actually got a little bit behind the scenes with them, was in the practice and sat in the box for the match, and you can just see how professional the players are treated. You know, they get $250 a day just to spend around the grounds for food or whatever. And you just really have the sense that, you know, everything is catered for them. You know, they have their car to take them to the hotel, take them actually wherever they want to go. Yeah. And it was an interesting to have that insight of where probably our bigger brother is in tennis, probably that few more years down the line in terms of development. And I couldn't agree more, really. I thoroughly believe that the ITTF are going in the right direction with this concept to really try to grow our sport and put, as you say, Johnny, put it on the map with the big sports.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to get your view, guys, in terms of your players and what they say. But clearly some of the things that we hear and what I see, and again, coming from the sort of commercial side of other sports, English Premier League and rugby and cricket, you know, the T20 series in cricket, for example, the IPL in India, the Big Bash in Australia, where you are there, John. You know, we've got UFC that's come in. I mean, last weekend they had their first bouts, didn't they? Their first card, and they got something like 700,000 pay-per-views on a product that's reaching the world. So, you know, if they're charging an average of $20 per pay-per-view, there's $14 million on one evening's card. And now those athletes will be getting paid significantly. Conor McGregor, I see him brilliantly this week, and maybe that's one to discuss later on, what athletes are doing in this times. But Conor's donated €1 million worth of PPE and so on for some of the hospitals and care homes in Dublin, in Ireland, which is amazing. But there's big show, big razzmatazz around the likes of the UFC. I'm not a huge fan of all the blood and all that sort of stuff, but there's no doubt as a sporting product, it's very, very strong, and it's clearly performing very well commercially. And in table tennis, I guess from other elements is, the World Tour has grown. I think from the first one, the English Open back in probably '96. Ryan, maybe did you play in it?
Yeah. I did play in it, yeah. Wanley Chin won here, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. And it was at Kettering, I think. And
yeah,
I mean, from those days, it's really come on. There's no doubt. But I think the calendar is pretty busy. The players are telling us that there's not enough time to train and develop and recover. I think certainly having been involved in some of the events with our national association and other partners who help run them, the financial model and the infrastructure model is really at a limit. We've really hit the ceiling in terms of what we can really push on for the events. We've got 300 plus athletes coming to the World Tours, which is where, of course, the events can generate their money, because the players are paying an entry, or the national associations are paying an entry, and the hospitality package, which is the hotel, the transport, the food, and covering some of the costs of the events. But if you put 300 plus players into a training hall, we're hearing from some players that they're not able to get onto the tables to practice. And that can't be good for the performance level for our players. So World Table Tennis wants to build the Grand Smashes at the top, 10-day events. Another challenge we have is if a player has a big win in the morning, let's say Liam Pitchford beats Ma Long, actually in 3 or 4 hours, Liam Pitchford's back on again. And so that story only lasts for 3 hours. So at the moment, table tennis doesn't have the ability to engage globally around the world in the different time zones to tell that story, whether it be for the sponsors, for the broadcasters, for Liam himself, for the performance of the sport. Somebody beating the Olympic and world champion Ma Long, arguably one of the best ever. Well, definitely one of the best ever. And yet we only have a couple of hours to tell that story. We can't even really get Liam maybe after that match to get a full interview, because he needs to get back to the hotel. He needs to rest. He needs to fuel back up again. He needs to come back for his prep and his warm-up, because he's got his next match. So if we can elongate the tournament, and players only play maybe once a day, it gives us more time to recover, most importantly for the performance side. But it also gives the marketing machine more opportunities to tell the stories. And then what we'll do is we'll filter out into the other events. So there's the Champions Series and the 2 cup finals. There'll be a series for women and a series for men, so we can really start to push the women's game. Because like tennis, we believe that the women's table tennis game deserves that and should be being pushed forward. And those 2 events will be one table events. So imagine every match being televised, every match having a crowd around it, and imagine where we could take that table. So could we be in Sydney Opera House? Maybe. Could we be like what squash did in the glass cage? Could we put it in front of the pyramids in Egypt? Could we drop it into Central Station in New York? Royal Albert Hall in London, under the Eiffel Tower in Paris? These are all things I think that become a reality if we can think about the logistics and the styles of the events. And then star contender and contender will then be sort of down the pyramid, so that maybe me as a 300 in the world ranked player from Ireland, that's where I can start to climb my trade and move up the ranking list, and then qualify for the higher events.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, Jonny, especially from my side, having probably traveled to a lot of the World Tour events. I concur completely with what you're saying. You have 4 qualification rounds, people battling it through those kind of events. And to some extent, they're the stars of our sport as well. Within those qualification events, they're playing 2 and 3 qualification rounds just to get into the main draw. And I like it completely where that's going. One question I have on that is what about numbers? Is it 16 players? Is it 32 players? Is it less?
So it'll be less players in each of the draws to give us that ability to get more matches on the TV and also to showcase the sport, and for less matches, I guess, in a sense, for players, more sort of high level. Because you're right, John, when you mentioned qualification, I've seen some unbelievable matches through qualification of the World Tours, and none of it's on TV. It's a real shame. It's almost like the best of the best are playing in those matches. And when I talk to the media, because I'm sort of responsible for trying to sell these matches, some of the broadcasters are telling me, it's only qualification? I've got Premier League, I've got Formula One, I can have basketball. I'm not sure, Johnny, where qualification table tennis fits into what I can show, because it doesn't sound important enough. So it's about trying to flip that to show amazing matches and our athletes who are amazing and are the stars of the show, and trying to get it shown as best as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And
just on that, I guess I would just add that there are some things to work through. So rankings, the ranking system, for example. But what World Table Tennis is looking at is how do we create a system where, a little bit like tennis, where the top players can't drop down into the lower, or there might be a wild card opportunity for a lower event to be able to say, invite Ding Ning or invite Timo Boll to showcase that player, which will drive ticket sales. A little bit like Maria Sharapova was a wild card for the China Open Tennis, for example, and so on. And wild cards for the organizers as well in those countries, because clearly part of the opportunity is to grow and develop local players, and also to tell local stories for the media, so that those national players in those countries can also be part of it. But what we don't want is top players being able to drop down and then take the world ranking points and take the prize money, which could block the development and progress of other players. Similarly, not everybody would be able to enter into the top events. You'd have to qualify. So top 64, for example, for the Grand Smash, and so on. So yeah, trying to really focus the quality of the events and the players.
Johnny, if I take it on a little bit with prize money, because I was reading recently that the World Cup in 1980 had a total prize fund of £36,000. And then in 2019, that was up to 250,000. So a significant increase over that time. What does it mean for players?
In 1980, did you, Ryan? No, I was still.
No, I wasn't, sorry. But what does it mean for players to obviously have that earning power, and what are ITTF doing to raise it even further in the future?
Yeah, we want our players to be stars that they deserve. We know the amount of time and effort that goes in by all our partners, all table tennis partners into our sport. And we know that our players train. I mean, how many hours are your players training? They're putting a lot of hours in, so they deserve the rewards. And I think within the current model of the World Tour and the events and the commercial capabilities of it's quite restrictive and quite limited. So we do want them to earn more money. We want them to be holding big checks on the podiums. Will we ever catch golf and tennis? It's going to be 20, 30 years maybe, again, sort of since the sort of 1980 cycle you talked about there, Ryan, to know. But that has to be our aim. We have to reward the current players and reward the current system of those that play within the environment. And we want to show to kids around the world that if you play table tennis, you can become a true star. And that whole environment and economy growth should drive more participation into our clubs, into our programs, into our national associations to truly grow the base of the game. That's what should happen, or that's what we want to happen for sure.
Yeah, I think we've covered it probably fairly well there in terms of how table tennis improves itself, and how we get ourselves up the pecking order against other sports. If you were to summarize that with your ITTF hat on, and a former player hat on, what would be the main aspects of summary that you think we need to implement immediately, to get us with these other sports like football and tennis? What do you reckon there?
Good question. I mean, looking after the players and giving them a platform to be the stars that they should be. You know, your Jean-Michel Save on last week, brilliant discussion. Look at his CV that you read off, Ryan, and you guys discussed, and you know, sports personality of the year in Belgium, and amazing. And he's well known. Jean-Michel's well known. I personally would have a goal of Jean-Mi should be as well known as, you know, a Tim Henman or a Gary Lineker. You know, we need to try to get table tennis really pushed forward. So what we're looking at is more prize money for the players, better conditions for the players. So to really enhance the players' lounges, the transport, like you were saying there, John, at the Australian Open for the tennis. Really looking after the players and making sure that they have all the tools to perform as best as they can in those events. And that plays into the calendar. So ideally, World Table Tennis over the next years will have fixed events for fixed years. So a little bit like the Grand Slams in tennis, you know when Wimbledon is, Australian Open is, Roland Garros and US. We know when that is, Flushing Meadow. And the fans know, and the media know, and the players know, and the coaches and the development system knows, so that we can really build up affinity with those events, and that the calendar can become a little bit more smooth, let's say, and players can ploy their journeys within that calendar, because at the moment maybe players are playing a lot of events, but if it's structured slightly differently, then maybe players won't have to play as many events, but they'll have their own journey, whether you're 300 in the world, 100 in the world, or a number 10 in the world. We'll all have a similar journey. In a sense, we'll be going to different events, but it'll all sort of fit together nicely and tied into the world ranking. So that for me would be key, is to really give the platform for the players to excel around all the show and the razzmatazz and selling the media and bringing bigger partners on board, being in iconic cities, so that we become a real meaningful global sport that people go, wow, that's pretty cool.
Very good.
Yeah, very exciting, John. We can see with how you you're a big fan of table tennis, that you really love the game, and I think that's evident in how you talk here, and obviously even when I meet at events in the hall, I can see that you're really excited about the game. Is there any player out there or players of the new generation that excites you a lot? You know, I know you get the opportunity to be beside them in the practice hall. You interview them, so you know you're as closest to any of these players as anybody.
Yeah, good one. I mean, I just love seeing the development of how the young players coming through. You know, you guys have some of those players at the moment. You know, Owen, Sophie, Anna. You know, you've talked about your players there in Australia, John, who can play in the World Cups, for example, Hemming, and then you know, go to the Olympics and so on. I just love seeing the young players coming through and having a pathway. And I think you touched on something on week one, which I think was key. I think, Ryan, you made the point around finances. You know, there's no doubt that there comes a time when the finances are tough, and a lot of players will take a different route because there isn't the money to be made really, or a full career. And I think with a World Table Tennis platform and a bigger economy, we hope then that pushes through and that players can really follow a career in table tennis and make a living. I mean, I like, you know, watching Owen winning on the world circuit there, and Sophie doing well, and I know from the ITTF high performance team and so on how that's progressing. You know, it's great to see Tomokazu Harimoto coming through, and Adriana Diaz from Puerto Rico, and just watching how these players will continue to develop. You know, it's great to see the likes of Liam taking a few big wins recently as well. Round the back shots from himself and Daniel Habasson, these types of things. Xu Xin still doing unbelievable things. Ju Yu Ling and Cheng Mang and so on, amazing level. there's so many aspects to it. I think, I don't know what you guys would say, but I certainly see the level improving all the time.
Yeah, I do miss some of the stars I grew up with, the Volners, the Roscoffs, the Gatlians. I miss some of these big stars, but we've got them back. Calderano, what a player to watch he is. Exciting, massive big shots. Coming from, Brazil is great as well. And, we miss, those sort of stars really, but they're coming back. And obviously the Chinese dominance was part of that, but that's being tested, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, no, and you mentioned Hugo there, Ram. What a great icon, Brazilian guy playing table tennis, good looking, athletic guy, does his backflips, brilliant English because his mum was an English teacher, so he's fluent. He gives his time generously. He's very focused on what he wants to achieve in the sport, that's for sure. But he's quite generous with his time, and he's done interviews for us. Darko Jorgic recently at the Europe Top 16 in Montreux. Brilliant discussions with him, great English, shows his emotions, shows his passion for the sport. Bernadette Zoch, also very energetic, great character. So I think all of these things, it just makes table tennis a superb product, and it deserves to be taken to the next level.
Yeah. Well, I can skip a few questions because we covered it in discussions already. So coming from Ireland, smaller table tennis nation, where do you sit on the changes to the World Team Championships?
The qualification process.
The process from going through the different stages to the finals.
I'd be really keen to get your views too, guys. I'm very proud to have played for Ireland, as you said. Thanks for the intro, Ryan. In 95 seems like ages ago. At 97 and 2001, loved it. John, we had a good, strong team, and we gelled well together, and we always gave our best. But if I think back to that and think that mostly we played the matches in the second hall, which wasn't even streamed back then. Keith, you too, in your international career, maybe similar experience. 3 or 4 of us on one side on the bench, 3 or 4 on the opposition. Well played, sort of ripple of clapping. No commerciality to that at all. Nothing sold, nobody seen. And whilst I'm very proud to play for Ireland and be there, I personally think, I think back to the days when Ireland played in Lochside, when I used to see Colum and Jennifer and Andrew and Jim Dill and Hilty, Nora McAvoy, all these players playing against Switzerland, playing against Luxembourg in a venue which had, I don't know, back in the day, 100, 200 people. Atmosphere was unbelievable. You felt you were connecting to it. I was about probably 10, 12, 14 years old back then. And somehow I could feel the product. I could feel the elite athletes, and I could feel connected to it rather than, them playing in the World Championships in a distant part of the world. So somehow for me, if Ireland played Wales, Ryan, in Cardiff or in Dublin or in Belfast, wherever, and we got the crowd around, we got local sponsors involved, maybe the spectators the fans would pay €10 or £10 in, maybe they'd be having some fun, music, maybe a beer, having a good atmosphere, maybe like your league matches now at Ormo, Keith, maybe local sponsors would be involved, maybe local media would come down. And somehow building that story at a local level, and then qualifying for the regionals and the continentals, are very much like FIFA World Cup in terms of the qualification process to the finals, and having that 2-year storytelling and driving that performance base as well. So players know, I want to get to the next round. I want to get to the next level of qualification. We need to get to the world finals. What will it take? But of course, we do hear that, of course, there's feedback, and quite rightfully, that, we're not going to be at the finals anymore. And that's probably true. But everybody's part of the World Championships. If you think in your part of the world, John, in Oceania, some of those countries will never travel to World Championships. But maybe in a regional qualification system, the Fijis and so on and so forth can connect to the New Zealands and the Australias. And you can create more of an economy in that part of the world, if you like, as they try to qualify for the finals in the different stages. And maybe that gives more opportunities.
Well, sorry, John, you go first. Well, obviously, it is right that we played in the championships and just been, in the second hole and finished our match. We rushed the first hole of the matches, so you do feel a little bit left out in the second hole that nobody's watching you, even though you're giving your best. You're sweating, you're fighting, you're running around the court and everything, but it's just a match, and that could be played anywhere. It is the responsibility of the host nation if it goes the home and away. It's the responsibility to put on a good show, like you said, with music and the best players there in the crowd, participating in the match. Because I took my team to Austria, the women, fantastic atmosphere. It was only a small hall, one table, but the atmosphere and the music and the media were there watching it, great. And we also done it in Kosovo, where it wasn't that sort of intenseness and people weren't there. We were just playing another match. So it is very much dependent on the hosts of these matches to make it a show.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that ITTF are looking to try to do with World Table Tennis then is because it would be a 2-year story for the whole qualification through, what we're wanting to try to do is to bundle that opportunity to sponsors and to broadcasters so that they can tell a continual story for the whole World Championships, which is then bigger than hopefully all 226 members of the ITTF can actually take part, because less than 50% were taking part at the World Championships as it was, because many of them couldn't travel or didn't have players to play. But hopefully that system now allows all countries to take part, which means the World Championships in effect becomes bigger. But if World Table Tennis and ITTF can do bigger deals, what could then happen is that some of that sponsorship, very much like FIFA and UEFA Champions League, no matter which stadium you go to, you get the same branding and the same quality. And for the Champions League, when the ball goes into the middle, this is a Champions League match. So what you might find is that the goal, again, to grow the economy is hopefully we can get more money into the sport, which then drops down for the national associations running those matches, Ryan, so that a Kosovo or a Wales or an Ireland or an Australia or a Scotland or England or wherever have some additional resources to be able to put on the World Championship matches, whether that be helping with the streaming or whatever is needed in the system, to try to, again, grow the sport. And I know that was already discussed before COVID-19, that ITTF was looking at ways to try to help each of the continents with some of those matches, and particularly the stage 1 matches for the 7 or 8 countries that were starting the whole process, really. So trying to grow that economy, grow the resources, grow the commercial revenues to be able to then invest and help the product get better, help our partners deliver that for the sport.
I think even from my perspective, obviously coming from Ireland, and obviously we've got Sophie and Owen coming through high level. I think my view on it is, a lot of the smaller nations, in my opinion, are not ready for the World Championships. I went to the World Championships with John, and actually we had quite a successful campaign in Moscow. But running up to that, did we really believe we were a nation of strength or of power? And I think I think some of the smaller countries, that can also be detrimental to them. It can also make you feel like you're not ready for it. It could also potentially end some careers. So I think the view that the ITTF has taken, and certainly that you're conveying to the viewers today, I personally agree with, because we need to do more work at the ground level. So I guess the question I have, what sort of support will there be going forward? And I believe Phil McCallum from Scotland actually had the same question. What sort of support will there be for the smaller nations going forward with this new system?
Good question. Good man, Phil. Thanks for the question there. Somewhere in Glasgow, maybe, or the northeast of England, maybe, wherever you are, Phil. So I guess just going back to the World Table Tennis, this is to grow the commercials and the success of the sport and really propel it into a higher level. The goal is to grow the economy for all the stakeholders and all the partners within it. So you would anticipate that there would be support then for partners, national associations. You obviously have the ITTF High Performance Department under Polona, and she's looking at ways in which the team can support global initiatives, whether that be all the camps that Owen and Sophie and Anna and so on go to, and your players, John, that were recently, I think, in Europe over the last 4 or 5 months, weren't you, for camps and training and so on. You know, we have had those players come through, and I think you talked about this in your first show. You know, coming through the different pathways with the ITTF, whether it be Eurostars in Europe or Diamonds or whatever it is. So we want more of that. We want to bring more players through. So I think there's a bit of support not only for national associations to run some of the matches, but also for coaching capabilities and to access more courses, access more support. Hopefully the economy grows, then more kids want to come into the sport. Hopefully we have more great clubs like Ormo. And I think overall the whole economy should grow, which will hopefully drive huge amounts of opportunities and support in the system. Again, national associations taking part in that new World Championships and being part of that local economy and growing the sport. And as you said, Ryan, those great matches maybe you had there in Austria, you know, really selling the sport locally to push the sport forward and grow the sport.
Very good. I think just there's one other question came in from our campaign during the week was from Alan Robson, and he's just wondering what the impact of COVID-19 will have on events going forward, and if there's been a strategy sort of proposed by the ITTF.
Yeah, good man, Alan. Thanks for the question. Is he still as fit as ever, Alan? Is he still running around crazy fit?
Tell you what, he done a 5K and I think it was 20 minutes, 30 seconds or 21 minutes. So he's not bad for a 50+ odd year old.
He's still there. Good man, Alan. Yeah, I mean, obviously the postponement and the cancellation of events is tough on everybody. Table tennis is no different. The ITTF Executive Committee have their next meeting on the 2nd of June. I have no doubt they will look at the current situation in terms of the COVID task force that the ITTF have set up. They'll feed in the current situation around the world. We can see different countries starting to open up. Bundesliga started obviously yesterday. Spoke with a colleague in Croatia who was saying that Croatia obviously depends on tourism, so they're looking to open up. So I think current suspension is till the end of July. That should probably be discussed again. World Championships is due to be September, Busan, and all the sort of events that follow on. I hope we can get events on in 2020. I really, really do. You know, that's the goal, and hopefully straight after July, September, obviously Europeans is in at the moment, Worlds is in at the moment. We'd have World Cups, we'd have a couple of World Tours. So yeah, we hope to get back as soon as possible. But I know the ITTF is passionate about not doing it too soon and making sure we consider the health of the athletes and everybody within that. So not an easy decision. But yeah, we want table tennis to be back. We need it to be back, guys, right?
That's it.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think, Johnny, that more or less concludes our script that we have in front of us. A nervy enough live production. But one of our questions we like to ask all of our guests is your dream team. 3 men, 3 women. Any era, any age. Who are you going for?
Different countries, yeah.
What's that?
Has to be different countries.
Oh, different countries.
You can't put me in, Johnny.
So I had all of you in my lineup. Do I have to go different, do I?
You have to.
Good. Different countries. That's a toughie. But I mean, Jonny Cowan was incredible, right? In the men's side. But actually the player I probably looked up to in terms of physical shape and style was Jörgen Persson. Okay, so 2 Swedes. So Jörgen was a player I tried to emulate because of his height and his stance to the table and everything else. So I might have to choose one of those, do I?
You have to bench one, yeah. You have to bench one.
Yeah, well, I tried to emulate Jörgen, so probably Jörgen. Played with Vladi through the juniors. Watched Vladi win the Junior Europeans in 1989. So I'd probably say Vladi. And then I'd probably go Timo.
Not a
On the
bad.
women's side, again, I've two amazing Chinese players, Ding Yaping and Wang Nan, both amazing medal tallies that they had over the years. But and Ding Ning, obviously another Chinese player, amazing in these recent times, a great character and very good English on the court and good fun in terms of interviews and all that. But wow, that's 3 Chinese ran up on the rules again. I mean, Tamara Boras was great coming through, wasn't she, when she got to the top 10 in the world from Croatia? And Sila Batorfi was one in the juniors, I remember, from Hungary when we were coming through the juniors. Great players. So those are players, I guess, that I've seen playing. I'd go for those.
A great team. Well done, team manager. Good selection.
John Murphy on the bench as coach. I hope Johnny given on the X.
I'd have all 3 of you guys involved somewhere.
Water boy.
Have you given your dream teams already? Have you been asked that yet?
Oh yeah, but we will do. But obviously, there's a hashtag there, Sunday TT Live, so the viewers can also give in their dream teams, and we'll post them up at some point. So that'll be a good thing.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Well, what about you guys? What else about the sport do you think is needed? You know, what do you sense, either from a playing side, National Association side, structure side? What would you be your big concerns or desires?
It would be to have the best players in the world to be stars. You know, you go to China. When I was there for World Championship, you know, Wan Liqin got posted up on the underground, and everyone knows them. And if that was replicated all around the world, that'd be fantastic, because you know there is a pecking order to the best sports, and obviously some sports filter down lower. We get that. Not every sport can be massive, so there's a part to play wherever you are. But yeah, it's a shame that the winner of Wimbledon, let's say, gets X amount of money and X amount of media coverage and adulation, and then table tennis world championship world champion doesn't get the same coverage, and it's a shame.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got to just try and improve that situation, really, because if you get heroes or idols that people can aspire to, then it just brings in a load of new players.
Yeah.
I think for myself, probably, you know, I know from speaking to you last week, Johnny, you were saying, you know, we're kind of looking at an Ali Pali type, you know, grand scale of things. So I think if we take that approach, you know, it's clear to be seen, you know, the Ali Pali was very successful and a lot of people enjoy going to it, and it's great viewership. So I think, you know, that, you know, times 10 as we know, I think that's going to help the sport massively. It'll certainly bring a lot more people back involved. I do think you hit a good point with regards to the timings of things. You know, there's a lot of world championships and European championships I've been trying to tune into when I'm sitting in work, and then, you know, it's kind of like with this show, if it's a pre-record, people aren't as interested. If it's live, you want to know what's happening there and then, and you want to follow the action. So I think from my perspective, you know, the timings of things, and also just that showmanship, which, to be honest, credit where credit's due, you've done a fantastic job there. And you know, I actually love tuning in to hear your interviews, and you know, your production, and you know, just introducing the events is fantastic. And I do think, you know, Bob Rowe has done a great job. You know, some people, you know, maybe aren't so interested in that sort of thing, but I think he brings great excitement. We shared a video on our channel of Koki Niwa doing a chop block, and it, you know, we've two weeks later, I think there's 26,000 odd views. And to be honest, most of it is actually because of his enthusiasm. You know, he's jumping out of the broadcaster studio. You know, it's fantastic. So I think that excitement brought into the sport makes a huge difference.
Oh, he's brilliant, Dad. He is brilliant.
Yeah.
I think from my side, and I'll keep it short, I think one thing I liked really, really a lot that you were actually involved in, Johnny, was the Lebar Live in 2017 in Dusseldorf. And I know it continued on at other World Championships, but I know you were specifically involved in the one in Dusseldorf. And on that point, I think we don't probably hear enough from the players. You know, we don't hear from what they have to say. And I know you said it, you know, they could play 2 matches in one day now and stuff like that, so it's difficult. But you know, I am always very interested when you get the players sat down on the couch and you talk to them and how do they play, and what's their goals for tomorrow, and you start to get that information. I think that's what me as a coach and B, me as a fan would like to see. So I think that's twofold. You know, to hear from the players, the coaches, the people that are on the cold face of the top of our sport. And so I suppose from my side, yeah, it's in line, I think, with what everyone said. But I think it's you know, getting more out of the players and getting to hear the personal touch, what they have to say.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we'd like to do on that, John, or explore, is it's about continual content, right? You can see some of the reports coming out through this COVID-19 of what sports and assets and how digital plays a key role. And look at us doing, this is a fantastic show you guys have kicked off. And, you know, digital and connection is definitely the way forward. And the TT Fit app and everything, super, because everybody's going digital. So one of the things we want to do is to be able to story tell throughout the year, and maybe it's like having a magazine show. So we go to each of these events and we have a studio and we're bringing players in all the time, and a little bit like BBC with Gary Lineker on Football Focus or Dan Walker or something like that. So it's continual chat show style behind the scenes, because that's a lot of the content, to your point, Keith, and the amount of interest and engagement that the table tennis followers and fans have. And if we can try and keep that storytelling going to connect the stars that you talked about, Ryan, back into the table tennis community and further, then again, I think that's another element of growing the sport. And we do have to keep innovating. You know, we've seen T2 come into the market. We've seen UTT come into the market in India. We see the J League in Japan. So there's all these things happening. And I think if we don't keep innovating and keep changing, we're in danger of being a Woolworths or a Blockbuster from the high street, and table tennis will from an ITTF perspective could struggle. You know, the Ali Pali one, Keith, absolutely brilliant. World Ping Pong Championship, all you guys, all the Irish support, brilliant. Dressed up in the gear, looked awesome. So I think it's important to keep innovating, and of course change is change. It's not easy. But I think we have to do the right thing for the sport and try and keep it moving forward into the future.
Excellent.
Very good.
That's brilliant. Well, I think we've got a couple of other bits and pieces of a new part of the show which we're going to be bringing, which is news of the week. So we're running into it. So as part of the news of the week, John or Ryan, you've got the first piece.
Yeah, it was interesting to read from the ETTU that the European Youth Championships, which were going to be staged in July, have tentatively been postponed for September the 4th to the 13th. And obviously reading that, it's great that there's obviously a plan to get back to business, but obviously as a coach for my players, and also being a player myself, it's interesting to see how this is going to work in September. I'd like to get your thoughts, where a lot of people in the same hall, different nations and stuff like that. We have to get back to competing, like Jonny said a few minutes ago. We've got to get back to what we know, but it is obviously worrying with COVID. And so that was my news of the week, where the championships are set for September. Fingers crossed that it does unfold that way. But I'd like to know your thoughts about so many nations getting in the same hall together.
Yeah, I think probably, Ryan, from my side, some of the challenges, and I know it was on ITTF webinar led by Massimo last week. You know, some of the challenges having 8 people on training tables. You know, European youths. We know it's renowned for that kind of thing, and that would be something that I've thought about and springs to mind in terms of when I think about tournaments coming back. I'll probably look at the very top tournaments, and I know in Australia we're looking at, you know, potentially say the World Cup events, or where it's a smaller number of players. I just see maybe the European youths being an event, I know, with 500 plus players, let alone staff, officials, and everything else. That I think, you know, I would say it could be a big ask, but that would be from my side. I think that something around the practice hall is certainly going to be a big issue.
Yeah, some great challenges. What's your news of the week, John?
I was really interested to read, and maybe Jonny, you might have some more information on it. Is that Jorgen will take over as the head coach of the Swedish men's team from the 1st of October. I know Peter Blomqvist, who currently is the men's head captain, is moving over to an exciting project with Truls Morgard and Anton, with a bit of a future in mind there. But obviously Jorgen now will assume the head coach role, and of course will sit on the bench at the Olympic Games next year in Tokyo. I also thought it was interesting what he said. He said, they want to win a gold medal at either the European Championships, the World Championships, or Olympic Games. And he did state that, we've beaten China before and we can do it again. So you can see the stall is set out really from the Swedish. And I think that's exciting for Swedish table tennis to have Jorgen. I know he was in a role as assistant coach, but now to be the head coach, I think they're showing their intent. Jonny, what do you think of that?
That was Jonny frozen. Keith, what do you think of that?
Jonny must have disconnected. I think, I think no better man for the job than Jorgen. He's a fantastic ambassador for the sport. I think they'll certainly be in great hands. He's obviously quite a close coach of Matthias Falk, I believe. So I think he'll be a good fit. He's got the experience. And I believe he's already quite close with, the future of Sweden, Truls Morgard, so I think, I think it can only do good things for Sweden.
Oh, I think excellent. Keith, what's your news of the week?
Hey, my news of the week's quite close to home actually. Two of our players at the club, Owen and Sophie, we've heard a little bit about. So they've both signed professional contracts. Owen actually actually both of them had quite a few offers. Owen had a Pro B offer, he had a couple in Germany, and so he's decided to go with third league in the Bundesliga in Germany North. And for Sophie, came as a bit of a surprise. She had well, my own club, Annecy, would have liked to have got Sophie. She also had her previous club in Germany, but she decided to settle with Nîmes, which is a phenomenal opportunity. She'll be playing between 3 and 6 matches in Pro A, as well as the remainder of the matches in National 1. So we're hoping that it's a great pathway for the guys, but it'll be a nice sort of set up for the future, that professionalism.
Brilliant. I believe Jonny's back with us. And what's your news of the week, Jonny?
A general one, I think, for me, I'm just loving all the different things that many of our athletes and people are doing on social media. Kim Demba, when he went into hospital and so on, and worked as a junior doctor. Will Bailey's active at the moment, and there's just great stuff going on to try and do something positive in these tough times.
Exactly. Well, talking about Will Bailey, obviously, we got the star of the week coming up. Keith, can you play the clip? So Will Bailey, obviously star of Strictly Come Dancing. He's just developed with Great Ormond Street Hospital a face mask with a rainbow of "Stay Safe" and his signature there, because I know from his social media post and his story that Great Ormond Street have been so instrumental in his journey from a young baby right through his career. So congratulations, Will, on developing the face mask. I bought 2 already. I got them coming in the post shortly, and once I get them, obviously I'll use them. And well done on you're our star of the week. So well done, Will.
Hi guys, got something really exciting to tell you. The last few weeks, me and my friends have been working really hard on a project to try and raise money for Great Ormond Street Hospital, who really need it at the moment. And we came up with an idea of face masks. And here's mine. That's the Will Bailey face mask, which I'm really proud of. I love it, and it is on sale now. So there are links on all my social media pages, and I hope you can share it and buy a few yourself. Obviously, I've got a real personal story with Great Ormond Street. I've been there most of my life. When I was born, I was taken there for my arthrogryposis treatment, and when I was 7 years old, they saved my life because I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I do feel like I owe them one, and I hope this is a little bit of giving back towards that. And please buy a face mask, and it could really help others, and it could help young children in the position that I was in. So it would mean a lot to me. Thanks so much for all your support. It means the world, and please buy a face mask or 2. Thank you.
An inspiration.
Inspiration.
Awesome.
He had the disappointment of Strictly, when he had his injury, disappointment of the Paralympics being put back a year, but as ever, he's ready to deliver, and he has on this one, that's for sure.
Absolute legend.
That is great. He did some commentary at the Europe Top 16 Cup last year. He came across and did the day on the final Sunday. What an energetic, inspirational guy, and he was connecting in with the players and so on, and his commentary was really up there. You talked about Adam Bobrow there, Keith. I mean, Will too, just amazing energy.
Yeah. What I would say, if you follow him on social media, you get the links to purchase some of these masks, and or get in touch with us, and we'll put you in touch with the link you need to buy some masks. Really cheap, but obviously not only a lifesaver for us in these times, but obviously helping a great cause as well with Will.
Very good. Before we wrap up for the day, we've got some fantastic news for next week. We'll run the clip and we'll see who we've got. Gotta say, I for one am exceptionally excited for next week. One of my favorite players growing up, bronze medalist in the Olympics. One of the guys that really had a phenomenal opportunity at beating a lot of the Chinese. His lobs, and he made the Chinese feel like they couldn't smash. Not many people can do that. So be excited for next week.
Yeah, look, I'm excited as well. Obviously, I've known Micheal a long time, lived with him in Denmark and Germany. What a character, the David Beckham of table tennis with his tattoos and his lifestyle. But yeah, really looking forward to that as well next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's everything, Jonny, that you would like to have to be able to sail on the ITTF World Tour. I think he was probably doing it for the last 20 years, and he was probably a pioneer in table tennis in that respect. So yeah, really, really looking forward to speaking with Micheal next week.
I think he'd be a great guest for you guys. I played golf with him last July. He was up with Terry McLernan at Drumchapel for the 30th year. It was Micheal came and Zoki. So Zoki Primorac. So the two guys came, and I stayed with those guys for a couple of days, and just talking table tennis and the technicalities and what the sport needs, and the young stars of the day and what they think they need to really be focused and play high level. Was just fascinating, and you're absolutely right, Ryan, the David Beckham of table tennis. And one of the things we talked about earlier in the show was making the stars true stars. Micheal, obviously he knows Caroline Wozniacki, the global tennis player. He's friendly with the Danish badminton players, and it's clear that they earned more than Micheal, and are maybe bigger stars than Micheal, and that. Personally, in table tennis, and passionate about table tennis, you'd want Micheal to be bigger than all those other athletes too, So that's where we need to go to. But Michael's great character.
Brilliant.
Jonny, thanks for coming on today. It's been a great insight into ITTF, and everything we've talked about today has been so fascinating. So on behalf of myself, thank you. And thank you to Keith and John for joining us again on another Sunday Live. Boys, they're coming around thick and fast.
That's it.
Pleasure, guys. It's been
Thanks
brilliant.
very much,
I really
Jonny.
like the first two shows, guys. Very, very good. And the TT Fit app and everything. And this is great content. You guys are doing a great job, and it's great to listen to you. I'll be tuning in each Sunday. Don't you worry. And anything else that comes up, anybody wants to contact me, ITTF is open doors, communication. Just get in touch.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jonny.
Thanks, guys.
See you soon.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jonny.
Stay strong, guys. Stay strong.